Do you live in the US and want fast, fresh and tasty meals without the hassle of shopping or all that hard work preparation? Well, don't you worry, as a lazy man, I've got you covered. Try America's #1 meal kit service, HelloFresh, and get yourself fresh, pre-portioned ingredients delivered direct to your door. So why not eat well, stay healthy, and avoid the cost of regular takeout by trying HelloFresh? Just click the link in the description below for a special limited time discount and free shipping as well. Enjoy. Well, we're into the run-in now. We've had a pretty bonkers week of results, and there's another new Watford manager. Of course, it's just a regular week in a championship. Welcome along to matchday 36 predictions. We've got a full weekend fixture list ahead of us, a new manager, as we mentioned a moment ago, and 12 games to try and pick the pieces from and make our decisions as to what the score's going to be. In the meantime, though, let's have a recap of all of the football over the last week or so. And I've managed to set a record. For a week of 15 games over 2 match days, I have got no perfect scores. But to be fair, it's been a very low scoring week, because if we go back to last weekend, I got 5 points for 5 correct outcomes. Thankfully, one of those was Luton Town's win over Swansea City, but you guys didn't manage to get many either. The only perfect score across the weekend was for 2 of you who got the final fixture, a 1-1 draw between Wigan and Birmingham City. Charlie got 6 points thanks to that and did beat me this weekend. And for Gordon, that put him level with me on 5 points. But across the weekend of all of us playing, that was the only game in which anyone got a perfect score, which is madness really. Into midweek, exactly the same problem. Nobody got any perfect scores. But like myself, Akshay got a correct outcome for West Brom's win against Wigan. We both get 1 point. Gordon pips us to the post with 2 though. He also predicted the Sheffield United win at Reading. And no perfect scores, not a good week. We'll be hoping to change that this time around. We start with Friday night football, Stoke City versus Blackburn Rovers. Now Stoke, we got the completely wrong prediction last week. We said when they played Sunderland, it was going to go one of 2 ways. Either Sunderland would be inspired against Alex Neil, or they'd lose discipline and Stoke would pick them off. Well, I think Stoke were up for that game, weren't they? 4 second half goals, 2 for Tyrese Campbell, 2 for Dwight Gale. And they suddenly found their ruthless streak, didn't they? It was a wonderful display. It was a brilliant counter-attacking display. And to be fair, it just seemed like everything they hit went in. It was the perfect day for Alex Neil returning there, albeit they're still, of course, behind Sunderland in the league. But a really good result, as was the case for Blackburn Rovers, who have found form with 5 successive wins in all competitions. They backed up their brilliant win at Leicester in the FA Cup with a 1-0 win at home to Sheffield United. And that keeps them just in the mix in 4th place. 9 points behind Sheffield United now after they won in midweek, of course, but maybe just an outside chance. But regardless, a very good season. They've scored the early goal and stayed in it. And John Dahl Thomason doing a very good job, because this is the stage of the season where Blackburn often fell away. And in an even game, they stayed defensively resolute and they managed to nick the 1-0 win. So it's not an easy one to predict starting off. We know that generally Stoke are better away from home, Blackburn are better at home, so it does make this tricky to predict. But I'm not going to sit on the fence with a draw to start off, because we know Blackburn don't draw many. I'm going to go for them to nick it. I think the Stoke one has been a one-off. We've generally seen great displays followed by average ones. And the last 2 home games against Brighton in the Cup and Millwall at home has not really garnered much of a ruthless streak. So I'm going to say they've used all their goals up, and Blackburn will nick it by 2-0. On to Saturday, and we start with the early kickoff on TV. It is Bristol City versus Blackpool. Both sides drew their last game 0-0, so Sky will be hoping there's no repeat of that. For Bristol City, it was a 0-0 draw at Huddersfield in midweek after a really disappointing display at Cardiff at the weekend prior. 2 games, 1 point, starting to feel like the inconsistent Bristol City again. They've gone from brilliant form this year to now just 1 win in their last 6 matches. In all competitions, albeit one of those against Manchester City. They'd have probably expected more from the last 2 league games, and if they got those points, they could have been in an outside playoff chase, but now not to be. Blackpool, on the other hand, a much better point at home to Burnley. Of course, the runaway leaders, they don't drop many points at the minute, but Blackpool, they sat in and played for a point. No shots on target, only 1 or 2 forays into the Burnley half. Burnley had a few shots, nothing clear-cut. It was one of the best defensive displays we've seen from Blackpool this year. but I don't know if that's going to be enough in this one. Blackpool away from home, one of only 3 teams to concede 30 goals on the road. Bristol City at home, normally the games are fairly tight, fairly narrow, so I'm going to have to go for it. And I know it's not a thrilling start to the weekend. I'm going for 1-0 to Bristol City. Let's move on to the 3pms, and this game is absolutely huge at the bottom because whichever side wins it, you'd probably argue are near enough safe now. For the other, it will put them right back in trouble. It is Birmingham City versus Rotherham United. Birmingham held to a 1-1 draw away at Wigan last weekend. Started brilliantly for them against Joe Maloney's men, but in the end they were pegged back. It was possibly a fair result. Wigan had a lot of the ball. Birmingham had a few more chances on the counter. But in the end, it was a 1-1 draw. For Rotherham, back-to-back home wins, absolutely crucial at this stage of the season, against the hapless QPR who are on the slide as well. And you've got to be honest, Rotherham deserved it. They had slightly less of the ball, but they created the better chances. For them, it's 7 points out of 9. They got a good draw at Swansea as well. And I sort of look at this game with Rotherham. If they can pick up a point, it's probably a very good result. It would keep them above Birmingham. And of course, although the other bottom 3 aren't winning at the moment, you would expect one of them to maybe go on a run. And in that case, these guys are going to need to get clear. For Rotherham, it's actually a chance to go up with Swansea and Stoke on 43 points. Birmingham's home form has been pretty dismal in recent weeks. They lost against Luton and against Cardiff prior to that. I'm tempted to go for a Championship's favourite scoreline here. There's part of me that thinks Rotherham might nick it. But no, I'm going to sit on the fence for the first time this weekend. I'm going to go for 1-1, the Championship's favourite scoreline. Did somebody say the B word next? It is a home banker at Turf Moor as Burnley face Wigan. Top v bottom, what could possibly go wrong? Well, we saw Burnley last weekend struggle to a 0-0 draw at Blackpool. They never looked like conceding, of course, but they weren't able to create too many clear openings. And then for Wigan, we mentioned that draw against Birmingham a minute ago, but then beaten 1-0 at West Brom in the week. Again, a decent effort. But West Brom had a couple of very good chances and probably should have won it by slightly more. And that would have been great because I'd predicted 2-0. For Wigan, though, it is just drying up a bit. A good start under Maloney, a couple of early wins. But although they're better defensively now, they're still not scoring any goals. It's no win in their last 5, 3 of them being draws, of course. And away at Burnley, that is the best they can hope for. But we know what happens with Burnley, and I'm expecting a very similar game to Burnley v Blackpool. But at home, the question is, can they break them down? We know that Wigan have got a threat on the break, but it's not been that evident in recent weeks. So do you know what? I'm not going to go for the big score like Burnley got against Huddersfield. They're still flying. They're still comfortable. But I am going to go for the home side to win it. Maybe they're going to have a little wobble, but it doesn't really matter at this point. They're so far clear with just 11 games to go. I'm going to go for Burnley to win it, only by 2-0. Well, next up is in-form Coventry City chasing the playoffs against Hull City at home. I've mentioned Hull's form many times since Liam Rossini took charge. A good 2-0 win for them at home to West Brom last Friday. They were really fortuitous in the early stages because West Brom started the game strong. Couple of good chances, didn't make them count. And then what did Hull do? They had 2 chances and they took them. Well, they took 1. Darrell O'Shea took the other for them. But to be fair, they got completely outplayed. On another day, West Brom probably could have won that by 3 or 4, but we've seen West Brom haven't been that ruthless this season, and Hull stayed in the game and took advantage, and that defensively is what they weren't doing earlier in the season. So big credit to them, but I'm not going to read too much into that result. They'd been 4 without a win prior. They'd only scored 1 goal in the 4 games prior. And the thing they're going to have to bank on is a clean sheet because Coventry at home are a wonderful side. They then turned on the style on the road away at Huddersfield. Again, maybe not the best start to the game. Huddersfield had a couple of good chances, but once Coventry got 1, they were ruthless. And in the end, they managed to get 4 of them. Gyökeres back in form. I feel Coventry have to make the playoffs and go up this year because otherwise Gyökeres will be gone. Surely they won't be able to keep him for another year. They're the form team in the division. At home, they are a very good side. And Hull City are going to play defensively. They're probably going to play to try and get a point, frustrate Coventry at home. I think, no, Coventry are going to go back to last season here. They'll produce the late show. They'll turn up with a big goal. And I'm going to go for them to win it. Not adventurously, by 1-0. I've been cursed by midweek where I'm going for low scores all the time now. So you'll probably see what we had last weekend with the 5-0s and the 5-1s everywhere. But 1-0 Coventry this time. On to a game that certainly won't have many goals though. It is Preston North End versus Cardiff City. Preston have drawn 3 of their last 4 games 0-0, including last weekend against Watford, which ended up causing Slaven Bilic some problems. And Cardiff, well, 3 wins out of 4. You've got to give them credit. I know they got that one away at Birmingham, but their home form has been crucial in recent weeks. And with that, they are now 6 points clear of the relegation zone, but they are still the side closest to that drop line. They were really decent against Bristol City, albeit again, it was a bit of a weird weekend in the Championship. Bristol City had the better chances in that game, and on another weekend, all of these teams could have ended up being beaten, but we're seeing this stage of the season now where the better teams don't win. It's about grinding out results, and Cardiff under Lamucci, they're starting to do that, so big credit to him. Away at Preston, though, who are one of the worst teams in the division at home, against Cardiff, who are one of the worst teams in the division away. Preston have scored 12 home goals in 18 home games. Cardiff have scored 12 away goals in 17 away games. If ever there's a 0-0, it's this one. We've not predicted enough of them this year with Preston, so I'm going to go for it now. 4 out of 5, I'm sure it won't be as a result. I'm going to go for Preston 0, Cardiff 0, just because it's the logical prediction. In our next fixture, the 2 newest managers / head coaches in the Championship go head to head. It is Gareth Ainsworth, QPR, against Watford, managed by Chris Wilder for the first time. Chris Wilder comes in after a disappointing 0-0 for Watford at home to Preston. You can see our manager special on both of these clubs up in the eye above. But needless to say, the Watford manager merry-go-round continues. For them, it is just 1 win in 8. That was against West Brom. And again, 2 blanks in a row. Albeit, we did mention it in the manager special. They've had a very difficult run of fixtures. Preston maybe being the start of the easier run. But prior to that, they played away to a Reading side who are wonderful at home. Blackburn, Burnley, West Brom and Sheffield United all up in that mix. They've really struggled with injuries this year. They've had a difficult run of games, but on paper, they have got the easiest running in the Championship. So I've predicted that Watford are going to make the playoffs regardless. And against QPR, you feel like they've got to win because they are in dismal form. They've still only won 1 game since the World Cup break. That was the first game that Neil Critchley managed, and Gareth Ainsworth has had no effect as well. We saw that they had their struggles towards the end of the Mick Beale era. 3 successive 3-1 defeats. The first 2 against Borough and Blackburn may be acceptable. Away at Rotherham, which puts Rotherham above QPR now, probably not so much. And against Watford, who are going to be chasing the playoffs now, who are going to have a new manager in, probably play a bit more progressively. A few of you mentioned in the comments of the manager special, the Watford, the new technical director from Frankfurt, it will match up what they were playing in the Europa League last year with what Chris Wilder likes to do tactically. And for QPR, they just need to find wins. It's not about style now. They have got to get results. They need some of the famous Wickham time waste in there. I'm not sure they get anything out of this. They've been awful at home in recent months. They've been awful everywhere, in fact. And I don't think Watford are going to fly by, but they've got to score goals against this team. I'm going for QPR 1, Watford 2, and Chris Wilder will start with a win. Next up, we've got 2 teams who need points for different reasons. It is Reading at home to Millwall. Millwall chasing the playoffs, but 2 disappointing results defensively recently. A 3-2 defeat against Norwich in a game where Millwall had all the better chances again. I don't think I can remember a match day where there are so many games where the team who had the best chances lost, but Millwall did exactly that at home to Norwich. Obviously, they had the 2-2 at Luton the midweek before, aided by a few refereeing decisions, but gritted their way to a point. And that ends a run of what was very good defensive form and very good form generally in terms of results. For Reading, we know they're a completely different side home and away. They were thumped at Middlesbrough last weekend. Okay, it probably wasn't a 5-0 game, but they had no shots on target, no real attacks, and they deserved to lose, which they did. In the midweek, they had a better game against Sheffield United, but were just pipped to the post. But we know they're a threat at home. Millwall have got better on the road in recent months, but they've not always been the most consistent. And for me, I see these 2 teams cancelling each other out. I don't think a point's a bad result for Millwall. We know Reading have still got that threat of relegation and points deductions and all of that stuff. Hopefully not, because Paul Ince has done a good job on the pitch and they deserve to stay up on that. But I'm going to go in the middle here. I know Reading have drawn 2 blanks in a row. I know Millwall have been scoring and conceding goals galore. I'm going to sit on the fence. I truly believe that this will be the Championship's favourite scoreline. So 1-1 between Reading and Millwall. Next up is a tricky game for my club Luton Town. They go away to Sheffield United on Saturday. Sheffield United, as we just mentioned, won 1-0 away at Reading. That was to bounce back from a 1-0 defeat at Blackburn. And to be fair, they'll probably be quite happy with that week. I predicted 2 draws. They ended up with a win and a defeat. So 3 points for them. They go 7 clear with Middlesbrough. Now they've won that game in hand. And if they can get a result in this one, it just gives them a little bit of breathing space. Luton themselves in decent form. Their only defeat in the last 6 was at home to Burnley by 1-0 from the penalty spot. They were very good in the first half against Swansea last weekend. Should have been out of sight. In the end, just the one. Swansea gave a little bit of a threat towards the end, but then, of course, Russell Martin lost the plot. For Sheffield United, it is just about results now. All of their last 4 games have been 1-0 either way. The cup game against Spurs, Watford and Reading were wins. Blackburn, obviously, a defeat. So I'm not expecting many goals here. But Luton have got a poor record at Sheffield United. It wasn't great last season. Thankfully, I'm not going to have to endure it again. Again, both of these sides not having many goals in their games generally. Luton away from home, one of the best teams in the division. Sheffield United at home, one of the best teams in the division. I'm going for Sheffield United to nick it. I hope I'm wrong on this one. I'm going pretty low scoring again. I'm going to go for Sheffield United to nick it, maybe late on, by 2-1 at home to Luton. 3 to go as we head off to Wales, and we meet the side who Luton beat last weekend and the side that are chasing down Sheffield United. It is Swansea versus Middlesbrough. Swansea, of course, without their manager Russell Martin, who lost the plot with a few minutes to go against Luton. In the first half, they played backs to the wall. They sat on the edge of their own box. The fans in the away end were throwing the ball around in a crowd to waste time after 10 minutes. And in the end, it came back to haunt them because Luton scored late in the first half. In the second half, as a result of that, Swansea came out and played. And while they didn't have a great goal-scoring threat, of course, Carlin Grant would have helped that if they got that deal over the line, or if they kept Obafemi alternatively. But the problem I had was they were the better side in the second half when they did that, without really probing. But why did they not come out like that? Because they would have had a better chance against a Luton side who are pretty vulnerable at home this year. So that sort of baffled me a bit, particularly with a side that aren't winning many games. 3 defeats in 4 and only 1 point in that time. It just baffled me a little bit because I feel Swansea are a better side when they're playing on the front foot. For Middlesbrough, well, it was just a blip at West Brom, wasn't it? A 5-0 win at home to Reading, a dominant display, everyone was scoring, and they keep the pressure up on Sheffield United. 7 points behind with 11 games to go. I still think they'll fancy their chances. I'm not sure they're going to make it, but I think they will win this one. If Swansea set up defensively as they did against Luton, they'll get played off majorly. But at home, Swansea, we've seen frailties from set pieces. We've seen frailty on the counter-attack. I'm going for a Middlesbrough win. I'm going for a fairly big scoring one. If you take out the last 2 games, their favourite score was 3-1. So that's what I'm going to go for. Swansea 1, Middlesbrough 3, and the Michael Carrick promotion train will continue. The final game on Saturday is at the Hawthorns. It is West Bromwich Albion versus Huddersfield Town. Another one you might put in the home banker category. Huddersfield still only 10 points away from home this season. Another of those sides to concede over 30 goals on the road. And West Brom at home under Corberán have been magnificent. A 1-0 win against Wigan should have been more, there's no doubt in that. A brilliant 2-0 win against Borough. And as we mentioned, I know they lost 2-0 at Hull last weekend, but there has never been a more dominant defeat than the one that they had there. How they didn't score, I'll never know, but they did lose the game. So at home, they've got to find that result. They're only 4 points off the playoffs, and with some of the teams playing each other this weekend, they've got a real chance to get themselves a bit closer. For Huddersfield, well, no goal in 3 games after Neil Warnock's opener, but it was a clean sheet against Bristol City. There's no doubt in they collapsed against Coventry, particularly after letting in a second goal, and some of the individual errors were bordering on non-league standard. I think Neil Warnock said the same. But against Bristol City, much more resolute. But the problem is draws aren't enough at this point. Home to Bristol City is a game they've got to target, and away at West Brom is going to be tricky. I can't see Huddersfield scoring again. Of course you can nick one on the counter. It's just whether West Brom find their ruthless edge. We saw what happened when Burnley and Coventry did, and I think it's going to be a big score again. So I'm going for West Brom 3, Huddersfield 0. And we finish on Sunday with a very big game in the chase for the playoffs. It is 6th place Norwich v 11th place Sunderland, but only 6 points separating the two of them. Norwich are one of the form teams in the division since David Wagner came in. A 3-2 win at Millwall. Again, a bit of a smash and grab in terms of not having the better chances. But against Cardiff, against Birmingham, they look comfortable at home. And to be fair, David Wagner's changed the way they play completely. It looks like they're going to make the top 6 comfortably now. Whereas Sunderland are just starting to dip. 3 successive defeats, and of course that hammering last weekend at the hands of Alex Neil, their former manager. 5-1 against Stoke. Their away form had been the thing this season that was keeping them in it. They've lost back-to-back away games 2-1. The Rotherham one again is a game they should have won. I think this game's going to be interesting. If you remember the reverse fixture here, Norwich won 1-0 at Sunderland and Sunderland battered them the whole game. I could almost see the opposite happening here, because Norwich are going to be front-footed. They're aggressive under Wagner. The Sunderland are better when a team's playing out at them and they've got a counter-attacking threat. They've not got their linchpin striker. Of course, Ellis Sims being recalled and then barely kicking a ball for Everton is really costing them. I think this sort of game will suit them. So I'm going to go for Sunderland to get something. I think we might get a thriller to make up for the TV games on Friday night and Saturday lunchtime. I'm going to go for 2-2 to finish off. I don't think David Wagner's train's going to stop. I think he's doing a really good job as well. I do think Sunderland will nick something. It's a game where people are starting to think home banker, but I'm finishing with a thrilling score draw. 2-2 at Carrow Road. Let's have a quick recap of what I've predicted for matchday 36, and it's basically a game of two halves, isn't it? The first half, we've barely predicted any goals, a lot of tight, cagey games, bar maybe the home bank up with Burnley v Wigan. But then in the second half, the goals start to fly in. A first day win for Chris Wilder is predicted as Watford go to QPR. My team Luton Town to lose at Sheffield United. Middlesbrough to keep pace with them. It was of course a bonkers set of results last weekend, so let's see if that happens again this time. They're just my predictions. Do you agree or disagree? Let me know in the comment section, and of course give me your score predictions too. As always, if you beat or match my score, you will get a shout out in the next recap with a full midweek fixture list on the way in the Championship. That will be on Sunday afternoon. If you did enjoy this one though, please do chuck a thumbs up on it. Subscribe for regular content from the podcast. If you're in the US, check out the HelloFresh link in the description. It helps support the channel and gets you money off. And of course, you can also click the join button to support the show as a channel member. Thank you very much for watching though. We do always appreciate it. Check out those manager specials from this week up in the eye above. And we'll see you again on Sunday for a full midweek of Championship predictions.